Over. We'll get more out to see.
Hello again, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the food and the little break. And I apologise if I wrested feet away from any of you, but we want to save the questions for now. And welcome to all our panellists. And glad to see that you all came. Really appreciate it. We were going to have name tags there, but of course that's one of the things that didn't work out. But okay, it just makes Greta's job a little harder. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Greta, who is our moderator for the panel.
Good afternoon, and first let me thank you. First let me thank NAMI Four Seasons for the opportunity to moderate at this wonderful event. I am going to introduce our distinguished panel and let them tell you a little bit about what they do. And then I have gotten some wonderful questions as people milled about during the break, and we're going to direct the questions toward the panel. And at the end, for a few minutes, if someone didn't have the opportunity to catch me and sneak a card, you're going to be welcome to come down to the mics and ask any final questions. So, first of all, we are pleased to have Leon Worthy from the Hendersonville Chief of Police. Mr. Worley, can you say just a few words about your work here as the Chief of Police?
I'm a patrol lieutenant on the Hendersonville Police Department. Sorry, Chief Lake wasn't able to be here today. He asked me to stand in for him. I'm in charge of Patrol Team 1. I'm also one of the motor officers for the department. And I'm a team leader. I have 6 other officers that work underneath me.
Thank you. We also have Lieutenant Ben McKay from the Henderson County Sheriff's Office, the Criminal Division. Welcome, Mr. McKay.
Been with the Sheriff's Department for 23 years. I'm a native of Henderson County, like my compatriot sitting next to me. And currently work in the criminal investigations. We have around 25 detectives that I supervise. Worked in patrol, worked in the jail, been a school resource officer and a DARE instructor.
Thank you. Next, we have Tommy Thompson, Henderson County Commissioner.
Good morning and thank you. As she said, my name's Tommy Thompson. I retired 3 or 4 years ago and took on a new responsibility as county commissioner, so there's a lot of funding and a lot of things that the county commissioners make decisions on regarding mental health. My retirement, or my actual working years, was as clerk of Superior Court for Henderson County. 32 years in that particular position. And with that, I have adjudicated any numbers of people to be incompetent, appointed any number of people to be guardians, handled the special proceedings where individuals were involuntarily committed, and just dealt with a lot of the problems that evolve around the mentally ill. So carrying both of those hats, I've had a history in my working career of dealing with a lot of mental illness, as well as the criminal courts, which was talked about this morning, as clerk of Superior Court, taking care of the records and civil actions and things there. So it's been something that has been of great interest to me during my whole working career. And I'm glad to be here today, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, we have Kim Gordon, the Executive Director of Buncombe's Jail Diversion and Pretrial Intervention Program.
That's me. I'm glad to be here today. And like she said, I'm the Director of Pretrial Services, and we have just in the last year hired someone to coordinate our jail diversion program. We did start it under Pretrial Services and felt like we needed to hire a clinical person to oversee that. I have 18 years experience in the court system in Buncombe County, working in the DA's office, trial court administrator, and pretrial services. And just in my experience with pretrial, we were in the jail a lot, and it was very obvious that we had some things that we needed to do a better job at. And that was clear to me because my son was diagnosed with bipolar when he was 9. After being hospitalized. And so I could bring that perspective to my job and see, how much better we could be doing. So over the past few years, Buncombe County has really put their resources into trying to develop services for the mentally ill who are coming through the jail. And I think we're doing a great job, but we still have a lot of room for improvement. And so I hope I can bring that aspect to the panel today. Thank
you. We also have Athena Brooks, Chief District Court Judge, District 29B, Henderson, Polk, and Transylvania Counties representative. Thank you.
I've been a district court judge for 8 years. Before that, I was an assistant DA for about 12 and a half years. 9 years here, and 3 years I worked with Kim in Buncombe County, so I'm familiar somewhat with our old system in Buncombe County and then the one here. And as a district court judge, I see all the criminal cases that come through the system, jail cases every day, the civil actions that are a result of that, and then also the civil involuntary commitments and civil outpatient commitments.
Thank you. We also have Jeff Hunt, the District Attorney from District 29B, Henderson, Polk, and Transylvania Counties.
Good morning. I think it's still good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I was thrilled when I was invited to come because the issue that you all have been talking about this morning and that we will talk about on this panel is a really current, almost crisis kind of situation in North Carolina. And we see it in the court system from, we kind of backtrack from the jails forward, I guess, as far as the timeline goes. I'm the elected district attorney of Polk, Henderson, and Transylvania County. When I originally was elected, I was elected in the 5-county prosecutorial district, which also included McDowell and Rutherford counties until 2006. I'm in my 5th term, And coincidentally, I'm also a candidate for Congress in the 11th District. But I look forward to discussing these problems, and I have been shuffling papers because I actually prepared in depth for this panel, so we'll see how it goes.
We have Tim Jones, Director of Operations with the Hendersonville Rescue Mission.
Thank you. My name is Tim, and I've been with the Hendersonville Rescue Mission. I've had the privilege of serving at the Rescue Mission for the last 10 years. Like Lieutenant McKay, I'm also a native and have seen a lot of changes in our community. I oversee a 77-bed homeless shelter for men, women, and children. And in my experience, the book Mr. Early, it reads like a script from some of the things we see every day and some of the heartbreaks and the tragedies that we describe there. It really resonated with what we experience every day, interacting with people who end up alienated and no place to go, oftentimes because of not only the system, but just the lack of opportunities and treatment in our community.
We also have Diane Weaver. She's a consumer math and science teacher with Henderson County Public Schools at Balfour Education Center and Alternative High School.
The consumer after my name means I have depression, which is very well treated. And as I learned in my research about mental illnesses, people with depression tend to marry other people with depression. And I married someone with bipolar illness, undiagnosed at the time, and we had children. And both of our children had severe challenges starting at 8 years old. So I have become very active in advocacy for children and youth with severe mental illness. Both my children are doing great now. And I'm proud to be a teacher at Balfour, where in this very auditorium, we graduated, I believe it was 58 students last June that otherwise probably would not have graduated from high school. Just a couple of facts. Children with mental illness are more than 3 times as likely to be arrested before leaving school as other students. Children with mental illness fail more courses, earn lower grade point averages, miss more days of school, and are retained at grade level more often than other students with disabilities.
Thank you. We also, of course, have Pete Early, author and mental health advocate.
Can I say something though? This is the trouble with giving a reporter the mic. I do a lot of panels, and you all are really blessed. I rarely have a county commissioner on a panel. I rarely have a district attorney on a panel. And so my hat's off to you. And I even more rarely ever have a consumer on a panel, even though we're mental health groups. So your NAMI is really on top of things, and also parents. So thank you. I mean, I'm psyched. This is great.
I'm going to direct our first question to the law enforcement panelists. The question is, why do police officers have to have their hand on a gun when dealing with a person who is in crisis? Mr. Worthy or Mr. McKay, you want to speak to that? Yeah.
After you.
Mr. Worthy.
My first inclination on that is they don't.
So perhaps that's a rumor.
That would be a rumor. If we have people like that, I'd like to know about it.
Okay, all right.
I would agree. It's not a have-to situation. What our officers face whenever they go on any call, whether it's someone in crisis or whatever it is a great unknown. Very rarely do we deal with people in calls that we don't know what the circumstances are, where we are aware and are able to predict what's going to happen. So when we go into a situation, we're facing a great unknown, and so we have to train our officers to prepare for that in whatever circumstances they may face.
Thank you. There's a follow-up question. In transporting consumers, if they're cooperative, why must handcuffs be used? Can both of you speak to that?
It's our departmental policy, if there's any question, if there's a response to a call or something of that nature, and we're going to put them in a cruiser, if there's a disturbance of some type or something, we're probably going to handcuff them for safety if there's an issue with that. Our cars do have cages in them. If there's not an issue, it's the officer's discretion. If it's a custody situation, if there's going to be an arrest, all arrests will be transported with handcuffs.
Our department has a similar policy, and the policy was created for everyone's safety, the officer as well as anyone who is being transported. We've discovered over experiential research that an individual being transported in a law enforcement vehicle, if that individual is handcuffed, they are much better situation as far as their protection and the officer as well. So that's our primary reason.
Thank you. I'll direct this question to you, Mr. Early. Has Amnesty International publicized what this country does to those with mental illness?
Yeah, it's one of many groups that has. I was fortunate. I got to go to Brazil, I got to go to Portugal, I got to go to Iceland, and I'll just speak briefly. Brazil is where we were in the 1960s. There's a big movement there to close down all their hospitals, and of course nobody wants to then create community services. Portugal was interesting because all of the mental health services were provided by the Catholic Church. They ran the hospitals, and it was a different mindset. They didn't have the tremendous fear of mental hospitals that you find in our country. Iceland, it was even less so. I went there, I was very impressed. It did not separate the mind and body. If you had a mental problem, you went to the hospital and they treated you like they treated you if you came in with, bunions or whatever. There was not this big ooh-ah. I came back and started singing the praises of Iceland and how well-financed it was, and the whole country went bankrupt 3 days later. I quit using it as an example. But, we get picked on because of we are very open and we're very aggressive at identifying wrongs in our community, and because so many of our people end up in jails and prisons. I think that's kind of unique in the United States, but by and large, if you go to other countries, well, I can't say that because there are some where it's much, much better and some where it's much worse. So I think I danced around that question. I'm from Washington, we do that.
Thank you. I'm going to direct this question to Mr. Jones. How would you go about introducing issues for mental health problems to a religious community?
Well, one of the things that happens with the religious community is even more so than government, is change takes place at a slower rate. That's just part of the nature of the religious community and our traditions. One of the ways that I would go about it would be to have, and I think there has been some success with NAMI having organizations and groups that come in and educate both clergy and people who are involved in the care of the people in the parishes about mental illness. I think sometimes there's a gap between what maybe the clergy know professionally and what they've been taught in seminary to what the real experiences are that people, when someone comes into a congregation, and how to make that person feel the real welcome that's at the core of who we are. I think just like any other person, religious or non-religious, there's a lot of fear based on what is unknown. And of course, that's our job to overcome that fear. So I would say definitely more advocacy and more support of the religious community, the people involved and the professionals in those kind of opportunities. But I have actually seen some things work within congregations in this community, and I'm very proud of those who take the steps to make people feel welcome and understand that this is not a spiritual issue with someone, that this is a medical issue. When you're having someone who has an illness. My oldest son has Tourette's syndrome, And that has been something that we have struggled with. He's 17 now. And we've struggled with over the years is how to educate people when they see behavior that they don't know at church, that this is not misbehaving, that this is not a spiritual problem, that this is a medical condition. Fortunately, we found congregations that are welcoming of those kind of situations, and they're open to learning what the science teaches us about people's conditions. So,
Thank you. I'm going to direct this question to our district attorneys and some folks in the court system. It's just an open question about guardianship in North Carolina. Ms. Brooks, can you speak to
What about guardianship in North Carolina?
It's an open question. Mr. Thompson, can you, as a former clerk of court, might you respond to that as well? Just
Guardianships is one of those things where that it can deal with all kinds of people. Of course, mental illness is one of those that comes before the clerk of superior court, and your main thing that has to be proven there is that that individual is unable to take care of and manage and handle their own affairs. When we have people who are mentally ill, they're going through the processes that oftentimes they do. There are points and times that they are unable to handle and manage their own affairs. I have actually gone through, adjudicated someone incompetent, appointed a guardian to represent them. Several months later, come back, reverse that decision because through the process, there has been guardians appointed to help those individuals to the point that they could, quote, handle and manage their own affairs. And with that, you know, we praise that. That's absolutely wonderful. Of course, I've seen other situations where, especially with the elderly, that's not getting into mental health situations necessarily, but just age and years oftentimes puts people into positions where they become unable to handle and manage their own affairs. And of course, there's generally no reversing of that. I particularly remember one young man who, I'll call him John for the purpose of just giving some instance because those matters are confidential of nature. But John was a young fellow about mid-20s, had a job at a local grocery store, worked second shift, and because of the mental illness he had and the problems he was going through, he would actually work 2 or 3 days at a time and never sleep. And all the people that worked with him, he'd actually, because he was the guy in charge, he was actually basically just killing them. They couldn't keep up with him. I mean, he was one huge power source. And then after that time period, you know, he would have his problems. He'd be down for a day or two. Mom and Dad would have to take care of him. Well, he never, what you were saying, he got off his meds. He gets off his meds. How do you know, I have a dog at home. She's quite elderly and very, very arthritic, and she won't take her medicine. I pay almost as much a month to keep her in good shape as I do myself on meds. But I have to physically put that pill in her mouth and make her take it. We can't do that with people. It doesn't work. You've got to get them to go along with you, I guess you'd say, to take those meds. He wouldn't do that. So we ultimately had to adjudicate him incompetent. And what did I say his name was? John? Okay. I started to say his name. So we ultimately adjudicated him incompetent, and the father and mother, ultimately because of the pressure that was on their family in trying to take care of their son, which they loved very much, they split for the sole purpose that Mom and Dad could not live together and take care of their son. And the mother, it basically fell on her. And it was really sad. After some time period, though, I would say probably 3 or 4 years, we reversed that. And as far as I know right now, he is fine, but mom and dad are not back together again. So he doesn't have that support that he needs of both parents. Daddy just said, I can't do it anymore. I give up. I'm not going to fool this. And he hightailed out, and that was the end of the story. Guardianships, they come in all sizes, all ranges. And there's a lot of different reasons why guardians are appointed, but one of those main reasons is because that individual is mentally incompetent and cannot handle and manage their own affairs, which is the criteria for the state of North Carolina. Of course, in the same token, you're dealing, and I'm getting off, but as my previous work as clerk of superior court, as you mentioned earlier about the criteria for involuntary commitments, North Carolina does require that an individual be imminently dangerous to themselves or someone else. And I've seen that on many occasions. I actually lost the favor of a very dear uncle right when I took office in the early 70s, who declared because of trouble that he was having that he was going to go and commit suicide. Whereupon I had him, personally had him committed, and he never did like me as much after that. But I helped him, and we got him squared away, and you know, he was a great uncle and did well, but sometimes you have to do those kind of things whether you like it or not. But he had, in fact, said, you know, I'm going to go drive this car off the bridge or whatever and commit suicide. I've rambled a whole lot, but guardianships is one of those things that is necessary. As much as we want to stop mental illness, you may not be able to stop them all, and that's one area where if you've got some real solid guardians, that you can help these people.
Thank you.
Excuse me for rambling on, but that's what I was thinking about.
I'll direct this question to Mr. Early. Can you give specifics about passageways in Miami that you spoke about in your talk? And are you familiar with Jericho Project in Memphis?
I've heard of the Jericho Project. There's lots of, look, here's my philosophy on this. My philosophy is that it's not a mystery, in most cases, how to help people with mental illness. We just aren't doing it. There's lots of good programs out. Fairweather Lodges in the Northwest. You got Cooper Reese here in your backyard. You got Passageway. All of them have the same essential ingredients. They get a person stabilized, and then they provide them with the kind of things I talked about in my speech. The problem is not knowing what to do with most people. It's trying to get those services to them if they're non-compliant and don't think they're sick, or it's finding a way to pay for them. You know, those programs cost money, and people don't want to spend money on it. I think it's kind of interesting that with your panel here, I mean, you have a mother, you have a consumer, your son has Tourette's, which is a brain disorder.
I'm a mother of 2 with mental illness.
Yeah. You have an uncle. Look at how the lives have been touched. And what mystifies me is, why don't we have some political clout? I mean, we look at just here, the first 5. I don't know about anybody else down there, but we all have mental illness touching our lives. We should be a strong voting bloc, and we aren't. That's what's frustrating.
Yeah.
That's what's frustrating.
Yes, please do.
Someone asked about the Jericho Project. That's actually what our program is modeled after somewhat. We went to Memphis and visited the Jericho Project, and we scaled it down into something that we could manage in Buncombe County.
What is it? Maybe you could tell, because I'm not so familiar. I can explain it all.
Okay. The program is operated out of the Public Defender's Office, and they have an enormous amount of funding. Their county just is wonderful in the amount of funding they give. They identify the people who are coming through the system with mental illness, and these are chronic situations. And a lot of them are homeless, a lot of them just are frequent flyers is what we call them in Buncombe County. They're through the system repetitively. And they wrap all kinds of services around them, and they staff the cases with all the treatment people come in at least once a month. I think they do it every 2 weeks. And they staff the cases, and they talk about, you know, what this person needs. They are giving them kudos for what they're doing right, and they're being held accountable in a quick time frame for the things that they aren't doing. They're addressing housing, they're addressing their medical needs, every need the person has. And when the person gets out of jail, they have someone who meets them in booking and walks out the door of the jail with them and is with them those first few days to make sure they get to appointments and everywhere that they need to be. You know, they have transportation throughout the whole process to get the person where they need to be. So that's kind of how it works.
Thank
It's a
you.
great program.
How do you pay for it?
Their county gives an
No,
enormous...
but how do you guys do it
Oh,
here?
how do we pay for it? Most of the money, we have not pulled in a lot of extra resources. We've taken things we had, excuse me, and organized them in a different way. But most of the money that we have pulled in came from the mental health money that reverted back to the counties in the divestiture of our local mental health agencies. And so we use that in Buncombe County to pay for case managers in the jail, the coordinator for the jail diversion program. Part of the money pays for the jail diversion case manager who's actually screening and developing linkage, community linkage plans for the people we get out. Pays for, did I say a substance abuse case manager in the jail? Now that money's running out. And it's not reoccurring money. So there's going to be a point in time when that money's gone, and what we try to do each year is pick up a little piece into the county's reoccurring funds.
Yeah, can I make one more comment?
Sure, absolutely, go right ahead.
I find this fascinating, and, you know, I'd really like to know if somebody like my son lived here, what would happen to him. What you're doing, I think, is phenomenal. It also bothers me, though, because what we're doing is and I'm seeing this all across the country. I was just in Alabama, and their mental health guy was bragging about this. If you want help, you need to go to jail. And that's not how it should be, you know? And I don't know, you know, that's the frustrating part, is how do we keep those people from interacting with the police and interacting with the DA and interacting with the judge? And that's, of course, what's so frustrating. I don't know if the national average is 16% of people in your jails and prisons have a serious mental illness. I don't know if that's true in your jails and prisons or not, if you're getting 16%.
It's much higher than
It is higher?
I'd like to add to that 70% of youth involved in state and local juvenile justice systems have a serious mental illness. So it happens when you're under 18 as well. Same process.
Thank you. I'll direct this question towards our elected official and our official running for office. Why don't we get all mental health DDSA patients, their relatives and friends registered to vote? With a voting bloc of more than 1 million persons ready before the 2012 elections, the mentally ill can have a very powerful voice in Raleigh. So why do you think it is that, as Mr. Early mentioned in his talk, that we don't have a more powerful constituency?
Is that my question?
Yeah.
I
Go right ahead,
have no
Mr.
idea
Early.
what the answer is, except I can say a couple of things, which may not be shocking. The pressure point is always in the legislature, in my opinion, and I think that's where the pressure, if you will, needs to be concentrated. I know that my representative is David Geis, and I have actually talked with him on more than one occasion about these kind of issues, and it's hard to get the legislature to where they're focusing on particular things, but when they hear from their constituents, that it does tend to bring the average elected official to focus on the area that the constituent is discussing. So I would urge you to communicate on a continual basis, not such that you're a nuisance, but on a relatively regular basis with your elected official. We're blessed in this area with some great legislators and a great county commission. There are some things on the county level, as you know, that also require that kind of focus, and so those are the two areas, the commission and the legislature. But I was excited to come on this panel because what we're seeing, and I guess I'm probably preaching to the choir, but what we're seeing is in prosecution and law enforcement and the court system, although I don't want to speak for the judge, but we're seeing the end result of some things that are not being done right down the line, and the result is that we do probably have in excess of 16% of our people both in the corrections department and our local jails probably are either mentally ill or have some mental health issues. And I agree, that's not the way that's a symptom that we're doing something wrong. And it is a massive effort to get it straight, perhaps, that involves everything from considering mental health courts and drug courts and integrating them to a huge training project that has to be ongoing. But I think in North Carolina, several legislative cycles ago, we made some changes in how we deal with mental health that resulted in kind of a catastrophe. And so we're trying to pick up those pieces as a society in North Carolina. But I think it gives us an opportunity to perhaps go back and design the system from scratch and borrow ideas from other states like Florida, for example. Everything they do in Florida is not great, but apparently they're ahead of us on this issue. And we ought to borrow ideas from other states and even other countries if they look like they're working. I'm a great believer in that. So we have a lot to do in North Carolina to get that percentage down in our jails to where we're identifying the issues at the front end, almost on the street when the engagement between the officer and the person occurs. If we could properly identify that situation through training and other things, then we can divert that person so that they don't end up waiting to be called over from the jail into a district or superior court when it's really a mental illness issue that was at the basis of the situation. That's too much talk, but I would say continue to be in contact with our legislators and our commissioners.
Thank you. I'll direct this last question. We have a couple questions for NAMI, but one last question for Mr. Early. We lost our 32-year-old son 3 weeks ago. His fifth suicide attempt since July 1st. He had a major depressive disorder and personality disorder plus addiction. Despite hours on the phone and talking to doctors, we couldn't find any help. He had no insurance. Providers weren't taking Medicaid. As you said, with this problem, this is a huge problem. Where or what would be the best place for us to plug in and make a difference for someone else?
Well, first I want to say I'm sorry to whoever wrote that. I do a lot of these speeches, and afterwards I'll sit outside and people will come talk to me. And I was in Philadelphia not long ago, and 2 people came up and they were sobbing. They had lost their son to suicide, and both of them were psychiatrists. And one is a rather well-known psychiatrist, and they said we couldn't save our son, and the tremendous guilt they felt. And I first of all, I don't think you should feel guilt. These are horrible, horrible illnesses, and all of us who have dealt with them know that. And we do lose people, and that's of course one of my biggest fears as a parent. I think that the way you plug in is by getting involved with NAMI. And that's one of the largest grassroots organizations. I think it's also just in talking to people, trying to destigmatize this. You know, I had a woman say, I loved your book, but I took the cover off because I didn't want anybody to see me reading it when I was in the airplane. You know, talk to your neighbor. People are amazed. The first thing when I get on an airplane or somebody says, you know, what are you doing? I say, well, I have a son with mental illness. They're like, whoa. You know, and then you find out that they have a relative with mental illness. And that's just part of it, trying to demystify it, trying to release that. You know, you can do that as an individual. I'm serious about one person can change a community. When you have someone who's running for Congress, like I did last week, come by, the first thing I said is, what do you know about mental illness? What are you doing about it? How are we going to fund this? You have to make it known that it's a priority. So there's lots of ways, and I admire anyone who's lost somebody and still wants to be involved in this. You know, NAMI is not like the ski club. Nobody looks it up in the telephone book and goes, oh, wow, that looks like a fun group to join. Most of us are here because we didn't have a choice. And I am always grateful to people who are here and involved, who do have a choice and are choosing to get involved in it because, you know, I don't want to lower your opinion of me, but I'm not sure I would want to be involved in it if I didn't have a son in it. I mean, this is painful stuff. So, you know, don't give up, have hope, get involved in NAMI, talk to your officials. Again, I'm impressed you have such a wealth of information here. So, you know, that's what you do.
Thank you. Could I ask Adrian from NAMI to perhaps speak to these last two questions? They're specific about NAMI. Tell us a little bit about the task force plan for NAMI Four Seasons.
Well, the first thing is that we actually want to form a task force, and we will have to do that by getting people to volunteer. So I'm hoping at the end of this that we have our evaluation sheet and that we have two questions on the end. First of all, do you want to hear about the progress of this task force? And second, would you put your name down and volunteer? So hopefully we will get some, and that's going to be the start. Now the whole overall idea of it is leading from Mr. Pete Early's speech. He's given us a lot of ideas. We, I think, are aware of what we do not have in our society, in our local community. And so the first job for the task force would be to evaluate just what we would need to do, what we need to set in place. We found a lot of information today about programs that do work. We would have to go out there and perhaps talk with these people. That at the moment is about all I can really say. It's going to be a tough job. We have a lot to put in place. So we're starting off with CIT, and we have some very, very wonderful officers here in Hendersonville. We have another class that is going to be taking place at the end of this month. And then we're just going to move on from there. So I hope that answered your question. I know I was really specific, but this is new to me as it's new to you.
There was also, Adrian, one more question about the program and the reason that Robin Williams, Mark Twain, and Louisa May Alcott were listed on the program in categories of sponsorship.
Okay. It was hard to actually assign a value to them because they're all great, but the reason they are on the sponsorship is because they all suffer from mental illness. We have a lot of people that we don't realize do suffer from mental illness, and these people have contributed quite a lot to our lives. They've changed our lives, both in Abraham Lincoln was our president. Of course, we didn't know him personally, but he was, and he suffered from mental illness. Robin Williams, an entertainer, and made a great movie concerning mental illness. and of course Mark Twain. All these people have really, and Louisa May Alcott, they've all contributed something wonderful to our society, yet they did suffer from mental illness. So it just goes to show you that things can be achieved. Just because people are mentally ill, they haven't lost their brilliance, they haven't lost their brain power. It's just a little short-circuited. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our questions that we received from you all. And Mr. Early has graciously agreed to ask some questions of the panel for a few minutes.
Sorry, guys. Uh-oh, you didn't sign up for this. You know, in my travels, I've often found that the dynamic person who changes a community is the judge. And Judge, we haven't gotten to hear from you, and I'm curious, are you that person here? And sitting on the bench, how do you see mental health services? Do you get a lot of people coming in your courtroom? Are your hands tied? What's your role in all this?
I'm the end result. It's either Tommy as the clerk doing something, it's the Reverend bringing somebody from the rescue mission, it's Ben or Leon bringing somebody to me. I'm the end result. The problem is that what I'm faced with is I have to make a decision within the law. I have discretion. And to illustrate this, I'm going to go ahead and use the name since it was in the paper yesterday. We had a young man that came through court yesterday. His name was Dustin Burnside. He had decided to break into 2 homes, steal a whole big bunch of jewelry. He had also decided to call up our Board of Elections, threatened to blow up the courthouse, threatened to shoot the sheriff.
Serious stuff.
So, he, come to find out, got sent to Broughton twice. It took them a very long time to figure out what was wrong with him. He had a beyond dual diagnosis. Everything you mentioned, and then add in a bunch of other stuff, not the least of which was self-medicating with whatever he could get his little hands on. Now, you have 2 choices. You can either send him to jail, prison, DOC, for 3 years about, or you can give, he had the fortune, the first time I'd seen it in 20 years, is he had been to Broughton, and when they sent him back, he had an ACT team in place. He had medicine, he had other things. He also had, at times in his life, been able to function somewhat. He'd never been diagnosed before, and he was schizophrenic, bipolar, etc. This is not confidential information. It was said in open court. Unlike the clerks, mine are open court. So I made the choice to put him on probation for 3 years. Now, in doing that, I could have made a big mistake. I mean, he could be crazy as a bedbug out there stabbing people now. I don't know.
It
I
would
hope
help
not.
your election results, that's your...
I mean, I hope not.
Right.
But that was what I chose to do. You could have put him in front of any other judge and they could have said, no, threatening to shoot the sheriff is a pretty bad thing.
Yeah.
After you've been in the system a while, we normally call that suicide by cop, and that's pretty much what he was on his way of doing.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how the story comes out, or the paper will let you know how the story comes out.
That's very brave of you, actually, because I don't think many judges would have done that simply because why take the risk? It's much easier just to send somebody on. And also, you know, I'm an advocate for mental health, but it doesn't mean that just because you have a mental health diagnosis, you get a free pass. And I believe that it has to be, your offense has to be clearly the result of your mental illness. And why I say that, and sometimes mental health people get upset, is you can be a bank robber and have bipolar disorder, okay? I mean, that does happen. So it's very difficult in your situation to kind of separate those sometimes.
I probably could have made it different. I grew up with a daddy that ran the halfway house at Highland Hospital.
Interesting.
So I grew up understanding this was something that could be treated. Now, he'd come home and say, they broke the law, they're going to jail. So it was a very much more practical response. So that's probably where I differ from a lot of mental health people, is you did a crime. You need to understand that. You know, yeah, you get treatment, but sometimes the crime's so bad you need to go to prison.
I'm curious, do you feel like you have adequate resources at your disposal to deal with someone like that?
No,
What would you want? What do you mean?
we've never, it all comes down to money and/or people that are willing to get out of their ruts to help somebody. I never think that just throwing money at a problem will fix it. You have to be able to work within what your system is. Kim can tell you that. Kim's worked in her system for all of her time working and using what she has. We have some things here in Henderson County, Polk County, Transylvania County, that we can use. Transylvania County has a very active mental health provider who is bringing in outpatient and voluntary commitments. And for some reason, I tend to see all those. It may be what we've just established, where he's saying, trying to fix the problem early. That's unique, and he works well there. Polk County has opportunities there. Henderson County has more people that are willing to do things. And when you have people that are willing to do things, then they can, we may not get money from Raleigh, but we may get some. We may get some money from people donating. We may get some money from the county. And a lot of it's just effort.
Do you feel, though, that, and I'm not picking on you, Judge, but I want to ask you one more question. One of the things I found in Miami was that judges were frustrated simply because there was no place to send people. There was no, intermediate place with somebody like this fellow you just met.
Well, and that was my first question yesterday was, where are you going to sleep tonight? Are you going to leave the jail with medicine? So until I got the answer.
What was the answer?
The answer, he had a mama who also has some issues. I've known her for a long time. But he had a mama and a sister or a niece, I'm not sure which one, another relative. And the mama understood when I told her, if you don't get him there, he will be in jail. She understood and knew me enough to know that's what's going to happen. You don't often get that, but you have to have some family member or person. Then he had a medicine, the doctor had actually sent him prescriptions that were with him in the jail. He had a card where he could pay for the prescriptions. So, you covered where you're going to sleep, where you're going to eat, you got your medicine. He had people. So just like you said earlier, he had food, shelter, assumingly water, air, and a person.
So those were his family.
Mm-hmm.
Where were the mental health providers?
They were on the phone. The lawyer was going to, and he had a very active lawyer who had worked her tail off to help him.
Yeah, I always find that interesting too. Now, I came from a liberal background working at the Washington Post, and I was always rah-rah for public defenders. In Florida, the public defender's primary position was just get the person out.
Well, this was a public defender, but this was a
And
lady that...
the DA's position was get them help. So what's the position, Mr. District Attorney, here?
Tag.
What's your position?
Well, I can't speak for other DAs, but we in our office now DAs are always kind of slow to get to the table, but it's inescapable. The conclusion that there's a real issue is inescapable. And so that's what I kind of tried to say when I first spoke. We see the result and then have to mentally work backwards to try to figure out what can we do at the earlier stages, not to be spending so much court time, which is taxpayer dollars, and not to be soaking up so many jail and Department of Corrections cells, prison cells that is, which are hugely expensive to the public. What can we do and where can we apply the changes to the system? And my conclusion is that huge changes, not just small changes, need to be made. And so we are not touchy-feely in the DA's office. Maybe that's too bad, but we're just never going to be that way. There are 44 elected DAs in North Carolina, and both Republicans and Democrats, and I don't see many touchy-feely guys or ladies, and we have a lot of lady DAs. But when you see the problem and it's so stark and so apparent, then you start backtracking and seeing what can be done and can we redesign and where where is it being done right so that we can borrow those ideas? And to the people in this room, I would say, and this probably doesn't answer any of that question, but bear with me. It seems to me that one of the biggest tasks is to make it very clear by evidence that it may be expensive in the short term to make the changes that we need to in how North Carolina deals with this issue. But I think it's up to the people in this room and on this panel to get evidence before our legislators and the public to show that it is less expensive in the long run. If we can show that you actually save taxpayer dollars in the long run by doing it right rather than piecemeal like we're doing it now, then everybody catches up to us in society and in the legislatures and in the prosecutor's office. And then you're creating a system that's cost effective and doing a good instead of just moving people along and letting people drop through the cracks and spending a lot of money that's ineffectual.
And you can find that on the criminal justice side. If you go to San Antonio, Bexar County, you can find those numbers. What you can't find is on the treatment side. But since Dretta's been nice enough to let me ask questions, let me ask one more. Since all of you come from such divergent background, let's start with just a scenario. Your son is sick, you call up the police, you say, what? How are you going to react? I'd like to walk through my situation, if you don't mind, if you'd be gracious enough to do this. I'd like to know what would happen in your community if my son showed up at the homeless shelter and was threatening, or any way you want to start it. I want to know how your police are going to react. I want to know how the DA is going to react. I want to know how the judge is going to react. I want to know how the county commissioner is going to react. You know, just to see, kind of put a face on this. What are you doing here? How are you handling the the Mike Earleys who wander in your community? I hope they're treated better than I was, but are they? What if I showed up at if I showed up homeless at your center and all of a sudden took off all my clothes, what are you going to do?
Which is not an unusual, I mean, that sounds very unusual, but those are the kind of situations we deal with. I would say that it would depend on what time we were living in. Because I have watched mental health here in our community in North Carolina evolve and change so rapidly. And sometimes for my staff, it's hard. We could almost have a full-time staff member who kept track of the changing resources out there. I know that at times, years ago, we had better mobile crisis type responses. There's also been times when we picked up the phone to call whoever was handling the mobile crisis at the time that, it was very evident that we weren't going to get any kind of immediate assistance. Sadly, just like probably most humans, when we are in fear, we resort to law enforcement. That's what's going to happen if there's a couple of issues in terms of just how serious is this, and we've actually seen it happen when someone has made threats and things have happened that we didn't think were going to happen. So we are trained to call law enforcement because law enforcement works. In other words, it's an immediate response, it works, and we know at least we have something in place. Now there have been some times a few years ago, I'm going back about 8 or 9 years, when we did have some mobile crisis that might have been our first call.
But now it's the police.
It is the police.
So you got a guy who's belligerent, who's yelling and screaming and threatening and scaring people, and you see he's actively looks dangerous, so you're going to call one of the officers down there.
We are. And
What are the officers going to do?
Since it's in the city, I'll defer.
Being in the city and having that done before.
He's going to call the sheriff.
Usually in a situation of this manner, it's either going to be EMS involved if they think it's a medical issue and he's acting out because it's a medical issue. So EMS would probably be dispatched, and if it's at the mission, this guy's irate, they're probably going to send an officer along with the EMS unit to make sure that the EMS people are okay. Upon arrival of both of us, we're going to assess the situation. If it's a medical issue, we can get the gentleman calmed down enough, and EMS thinks it's okay, they're going to transport him on to the hospital. what's going to
Do
happen.
you have CIT?
No, I do not.
How come?
We are in process of training, and we have officers in place now that do have CIT training.
Yeah.
I personally not.
Isn't it nice when you have an obnoxious outsider putting you on the spot? I'm sorry. No, you
I'm
said you
used to it.
personally don't, or you do?
I'm sorry?
You said you have personal CIT?
No, I do not.
Yeah. Is cost a reason? Is it difficult, or is that one reason, or do you
Cost
think?
is always an issue
Yeah.
with any kind of training or.
Do you think your officers have a lot of contact, though, with mental health cases?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so it's something that probably would be helpful if you could figure out a way to afford it or get it in the training.
Yes.
How about the sheriff's office? Let's say the shelter's outside.
We're blessed that we've been able to afford several of our officers to go to CIT. Currently, the squad that's working today has half of their squad already trained.
Wow.
So we're real blessed, and their response to me in asking about that was that it assists them in being able to go into a situation better armed with information to handle, whatever they see. To be able to know what the resources are that are available, to know if it's something that they need to take care of right away, just purely a law enforcement action, or if it's something that can be resolved with pulling in the team or whatever other resources they need to bring.
Let's say this guy hit, no offense, Dr. Jones, but let's say he hit the Reverend Jones, so he's committed a crime. Are you going to automatically arrest him, or if the Reverend says, oh, he was just psychotic, I mean, do you have any discretion or not?
Certainly, we have discretion.
That's pretty serious, though.
There's a small focus of laws that we do not have discretion about, and that's mostly in the domestic violence realm. But yes, we have discretion, and certainly the opinion and desire of the victim of the crime is very important to us in making our decision.
The reason I ask that is because a story you'll hear over and over is that a family will have a child who acts out and may even strike a parent. And the parent in desperation calls the police, and the police show up, and the parent says, yeah, they hit me. And without realizing, okay, a crime's been committed, we have to arrest that person depending on which state you're in. In Florida, this was the case. And then they take him to jail, and of course the person who's psychotic is angry, the parents are upset, everybody's mad at the police saying, why did you handle it that way? That's why I asked if you had some discretion or, what it was. And then, in Florida, of course, the person can't return to the home where the attack has happened. So now you've just sent the Reverend Jones another person because he's homeless. So let's say your guy's going to get arrested. What's your jail like? Do you have a special mental health unit? Does the sheriff run the jail?
We do run the jail here, and we have CIT officers trained that work in the jail as well. So there are ways that they deal with individuals who are incarcerated. Certainly, the primary focus is going to be securing that person, make sure that their safety is and the community's safety is taken care of, and then getting that person before a judge to help with the determination whether it's a criminal matter or.
So a parent shows up at your door and says, my son just got arrested, he's off his meds, he'll take him, I don't have him, can you provide him? Does that happen?
There would have to be a medical evaluation done in order for there to be any kind of medication provided by the county.
Yeah. I just wondered if one of the problems in Miami was that they had what was called a fail first. These medications were so expensive that they had to deal with Risperdal, and if you came in, you got Risperdal. If you wanted Cyprexa, Abilify, Geodone, whatever, you got Risperdal. I just wondered how you handle someone who comes in. Do they have to bring their own meds, and does that create a problem on itself with, not that it would happen, but somebody showing up saying, hey, these are my meds, and you're looking at them going, well, those are rather curious meds.
Certainly, those are evaluated, but they're evaluated by the medical personnel. That
Your
have the
county,
jail.
would your county pay for meds?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would.
Should we ask the county commissioner? Do you want a bill for meds?
I don't know that answer either.
If you're interested at all in how it works in Buncombe County, The county has negotiated some of the contracts they have with providers to build in some of those services. So we have Winches is our public health, kind of like took the place of our health department. And so because they get a large sum of money from the county built into the contract in the last 2 years that they have to immediately see anybody released from the jail for meds. And then they leave the jail with a supply to get them long enough down the road that they have that appointment with the doctor. So it's planning and
Now, if the person's in
building
jail, how are they getting their meds? Because one of the things you saw in Miami was people come in, be off their meds, take a swing at an officer, you know, spit, throw urine, all of a sudden they got 2 felonies, and, you know, they were brought in for public nuisance, and now all of a sudden they're looking at, you know, serious jail time.
If they have family members or friends who can bring the medicine to the facility in the prescription bottle, then they can get it while they're in custody. It has to be reviewed by the medical staff, so that sometimes causes a time lag. The bad, and this is the bad thing, and I have tried to advocate better situation with this, but if they come into the jail, they don't have their meds, and we have a formulary that the medical staff prescribes from. So if they're taking something that's not on the formulary, they're going to change their medication. And I know you guys know, just like I know from the experience with my son, that just because you're switching out a mood stabilizer for a mood stabilizer doesn't mean it's going to work the same way. But that's one of those financial decisions that
Do you have a psychiatrist on, and I mean, I'm not really trying to pick on you all. I'm thrilled you're here. Well, you'll never come back, but I'm thrilled you're here. Do you have a psychiatrist on hand or call or what at the jail, or do you have to just rely on your general doctor?
We have a nurse on duty at the jail, and we have access to team members that can come in to deal with whatever.
I didn't know if there's a lack of psychiatry in this area. Sometimes that's a real problem in, you know, rural areas in particular.
Sure.
I like to speak to that for children. When my son was 9, he needed a hospitalization, and we called emergency medical services, of course. It's a brain disorder, you know, and we were directed to the police. And we were batted back and forth. My husband was on the phone. I was out in the backyard watching our son who was trying to run away. And our daughter was wandering around the house, our 3-year-old. And finally, they got the police out there. And since my son ran, they took him into custody. And I had already arranged with the insurance company, with the psychiatrist, and the hospital to have my child admitted. But unfortunately, we live 1/3 of a mile from the county line, and this hospital was in Buncombe County. We live in Henderson. So the police had to take him down to Hendersonville, and it was a weekend. So while they were waiting for a magistrate, he was in a holding cell. He was crying this whole time. My husband had been allowed to come down and follow the police car down. And they did keep the door to the holding cell open, and my husband was allowed to be there with him. But he was crying and saying, "I'm not a criminal," all sorts of things. I mean, and finally, the magistrate got there, and he had to order a mental health evaluation, even though my insurance company, the psychiatrist, and the hospital were all in agreement. And so my son had to wait longer in the cell for an adult psychiatrist. They didn't send in a child psychiatrist, who then did approve the hospitalization. So at 11 at night, he'd fallen asleep, and he finally got to the hospital.
And I know it's a lack of psychiatry access is a real problem, especially with child psychiatry. So, Mr. District Attorney, I'm not going to let you off the hook. You got Pete Early, who's hit the Reverend Jones and has ended up coming your case. The police have brought him in. I'm sitting in the sheriff's office, even though I should be in the city jail. What are you going to do?
Well,
What
let me go
happens?
back to something earlier that you said, that the county taxpayers pay a huge amount of money every year for medical treatment of prisoners, including mental illness aspects. Because in the old days, the county jail operators, the sheriff's department used to, when they saw a health problem develop, they wanted to transfer the person into the Department of Corrections, because they could get whatever medical attention they needed, whether it was mental health or conventional, and the state used to pay for that. Well, now the state bills the county back, so that there's a huge price tag every year for medical attention given to people who are incarcerated throughout the year in each respective county. In answer to the particular fact situation that you've outlined, the DAs do have a lot of discretion, and we try to be responsible and reasonable in exercising that discretion. And a lot depends on the impression that the law enforcement officer, the arresting officer had, and the victim. If the victim arrives in or if we talk to the victim as a witness and they understand what went on and do not necessarily want to, prosecute to the fullest, then that allows us to take a position that more accurately adjusts to what the victim would like to do. And if the victim knew, for example, your son, or knew that there was a mental illness issue, the victim would probably explain that to us, and that would cause us to handle that.
One would hope that the victims in my son's case wanted him put in prison. I mean, they were pretty hardcore about that.
Well, I'm not saying that that's one of the things that's a problem, is there are a huge number of situations that fall through the cracks. Perhaps the victim couldn't get or didn't want to get in touch with us. Or what we run into a gazillion times is the victim witness has their phone disconnected, or they move to another address, and by the time the trial occurs, we don't have a victim or a witness to describe to us the situation, and that just puts more pressure on the poor police officer who's may not be properly trained to understand exactly what's going on with this particular person.
At the risk of putting you on the spot, but if you're going to run for Congress, you'll get used to all this.
I've been on
Do
this.
parents, can parents contact your office? Their kid gets arrested, picked up, mental health, do they contact you, or
They
should
can,
they
and
be
they-
afraid to, or they should go through their attorney? Or
Well-
that's a question I often get asked is, what can I do? I want them to know that my kid has a mental illness, but I'm afraid to talk to him.
We can't talk to you if you have a lawyer, basically. So we normally need to go through the lawyer. However, if the lawyer is technically representing the child, for example, we do talk to parents, and they do call us. But we're woefully understaffed, and since 2009, we've lost 33% of our non-attorney staff.
Wow.
In our 3-county prosecutorial district. So we can't even take all the calls that we used to take, telephone calls. We just do not have the people. So if you do, you should call us, but it's gonna be tough to get up with us. You're gonna get a crazy answering system that the administrative office of the courts has forced us to have. So you're not even gonna get a human being. Like, I was one of the last districts who allowed them to pressure us into going to that thing. You used to get a human being in our office, at least. We might pass the buck, but at least you'd have somebody who you could say, what is your name? So when you get to me finally and run into me, you can say, well, I was treated badly by so-and-so. Now you get a recording, and I mean, we don't have the people to. So, I mean, there are disconnects throughout the system.
Judge,
Amen.
I'm willing to give you a free pass because you've eloquently already described what you've done and what you did rather bravely, I think, just in court. But unless you want to say something about this hypothetical case.
It's not hypothetical, it happens. Often, we'll just say often, how's that? what you described are misdemeanors. I mean, unless the reverend gets hurt, broke bone, serious injury, it's a misdemeanor. In reality, what's probably going to happen is the dude's probably going to have been in jail for a couple weeks, 30 days. He's going to get time served.
Yeah, time
That's
served out the
reality.
door. Yeah,
I mean, I can give you, fairy tales and romance if you want, but I'm going to give you reality.
yeah, and he'll be back in a few more days
Yes.
because he's still untreated and
And
going
then-
through the system.
Sometimes the mission will take them back. Sometimes they won't. And that I can't tell them, and that's entirely within their discretion, and they have their criteria. I've seen them take people back. I wouldn't have took them back. But they've tried and tried and tried. And then I've seen them with other people, they've just said, no, you've got to learn to play by the rules.
So, Mr. County Commissioner, you're really on the hot spot now. I'm showing up, I'm an angry parent. I said, look, I went to NAMI, I've heard about ACT teams, I've heard about jail diversion, I've heard about this. Why aren't you doing something? I got my kid running around, he's taking swings at the Reverend Jones, he's going in jail, it's a waste of money. I elected you. What are you doing? Aren't you glad you came this morning?
You're probably going to get the answer that go to your mental health people that's in the community. I personally can't do anything about it except to throw some money at the problem.
Right, that's what I want.
And everybody wants money thrown at the problem.
Which, let me interrupt you there, because that is the key, and that's what I want people to understand. You sit in your office, I come in, and luckily you had experience with mental health, so you understand me. But behind me is autism, is Tourette's, is breast cancer, is schools. How come we don't have enough policemen? I got robbed last week. I want you to do something. How do you prioritize that?
That's where the problem really develops. Each and every county commissioner, there's 5 in Henderson County, which I'm sure most of you know. We have interests that are, I'm more interested in some things than others are.
Sure. Roads,
And,
schools.
exactly. We have a budget. This year, I'm sure that many of you recognize, we had to cut the budget 7.5%. Well, when you cut 7.5%, that means mental health comes in at 7.5% less than what we gave them last year as well. The state of North Carolina, and I see one of our representatives back there, the state of North Carolina is doing their best to try to back off of any responsibility they have in a whole lot of areas, especially mental health, when they close down places like Dorothea Dix Hospital and some things of that nature. What they're wanting to do and trying to do, and constantly we're fighting, is that on the state level they want to send it back to the county. You're responsible. So what happens is you've got the mentality of the individuals in the community who have the same situation of interest, just like all of us do. Some people out there, even in this audience, maybe are more interested in schools than they are in the parks. They're all interested. All of these folks here that wouldn't be here are interested in mental health.
Right.
So when you come down to the final analysis, it's, do you want to raise taxes for this particular issue? We cut the budget on the schools 7.5%. How many people out there, if you were to put out a referendum today,
On mental health or schools.
Yep. or roads, or playgrounds, and it's a great, big, huge balancing act. I, as an individual interested in mental health, can go out there on a daily basis and fight for it as far as the county commissioner is concerned. But until I get 2 others on that board that's willing to jump in on an issue with me, join in that particular issue, I can't get anything accomplished. I'm a
Right.
one-man
That's why you
band.
need their help. You need them to go to those county commissioners. You need them to say,
Exactly.
You matter.
There's one of the issues, and I'm sure that many of you out here probably have read the papers and whatnot, but back in the middle of the summer, we had this issue of selling puppies and Kit Kats at the local flea markets and stuff. We had a big outbursting of people saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Well, you know, those people were hurt. We wound up making sure that the local flea markets, the local tailgates, places and whatnot, were not selling puppies and kittens. Until such time as the mental health community rises to the issue, and they are actually heard as opposed to just having a meeting within themselves. You know, I could meet all day long. If you have a church and the only people that ever come are the same ones that's there every Sunday, after Sunday, after Sunday, after Sunday, you're not going to get any recruits. You're not going to save any of those folks that are out there that needs the help. And these people that's in that church, they've got to go out there, and just like the mental health people, you've got to get in the community. You've got to talk about it. You've got to ask for more money. And you've got to, you know, be active in that particular area. Now, in the same token, here we are as county commissioners. It's our responsibility to look over that budget. We've got to make sure that money's spent properly. We are responsible. Not only are we responsible to give you that money, but we're responsible to see to it that you spend it properly. And we're going to be watching over those shoulders. So, you know, that puts the folks that are in the mental health agencies, they've got to produce. And they should produce, and they're getting those monies. It starts at the federal level, state level, county level, but it all starts right here with individuals who wants to work at it instead of just having a meeting amongst themselves and saying, hello, I'm a mental health advocate, and I go home. It's got to be more.
Thank you very much.
You North Carolinians are very, especially to a Virginian, thank you very much.
Thank you. We want to just take a few minutes before we wrap up to see if there's anyone in the audience that didn't have a chance to get a question answered by Mr. Early or any of the panelists. If you could come down to one of the mics, please. Go ahead.
My name is Lynn Eisenbiel. I'm a member of NAMI. And my husband and I have been on the committee that's been organizing this wonderful, and thank you, event. And I hope I remember. As we thought of people to invite, it was all the affiliates in North Carolina. And then we thought, oh, politicians. And we sent out a lot of invitations. And there's one commissioner. We invited 5. 3 state legislators, one of whom I know is on the Public Safety Committee at the state level. 3 were sent out. 1 came, Mr. McGrady in the back. 2 never even answered. That's very frustrating.
That's why you re-elect the ones that show up. They're taking the time to come here, they're taking the time to listen to you, they're being serious about it. So why wouldn't you want somebody like that in office?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to say that schools are an issue. There are mentally ill people in the schools. Mental health is an issue in the schools. There are people who show up at meetings because their interests are in parks. There are mentally ill people who sleep in our parks. Mentally ill people in our jails. There isn't an issue, I don't think, that comes before legislative bodies that the mentally ill people aren't involved in. So if you think that this is a very narrow issue and it needs people to show up, yes, you're right, but no, you're not right. Because mentally ill people are involved in everything. And we need help in the courts, and the DA's office, and the jail diversion, and the schools.
Well, you have a great panel up here
We
who
do.
showed up, so you should be grateful.
Thank you
We are.
so much.
We
Thank
are.
you.
I'm going to go to the left on the left.
For the panel in general, whoever could respond to this, it seems so many issues with mentally ill are because of medication noncompliance. And that, of course, is because of their mental illness. What could we do? I know that's a slippery slope as far as civil rights go, but is there anything we can do to force someone who is non-compliant and who cannot make responsible decisions as we see them, to take their medication and to get treatment?
You should look at the Treatment Advocacy Center TAC on the website, set up by Fuller Torrey. That's all about assisted outpatient treatment, which requires a person, if they have a history of noncompliance, of hospitalizations or violence under certain groups, Kinder's Law is what it's called, to take their medication. But that is on the national level. I don't know if North Carolina has that. It's very controversial. But if you're not aware of that, that's one of the, that answers your question. It's called assisted outpatient treatment.
And I have one more quick question, quick answer. Is on a involuntary commitment, is inability to care for yourself, like you're saying, eating your own feces, that sort of thing, considered imminent danger?
Thank you.
My question is for Mr. Early. North Carolina was recently investigated by the Department of Justice, and they were found to be in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Olmstead Act, and they are institutionally biased towards people with mental illness, meaning they are warehousing them in family care homes. What advice would you give the state of North Carolina on this situation?
You know, that's way beyond me. I'd have to look at your, the federal government always steps in and is always quick, and sometimes state legislatures actually appreciate it because it takes the heat off them. I doubt if that's the case here. But, I'm sorry. I can't give you specific advice on that. It all comes down to money. And it all comes down to what the county commissioner just said. We can sit here and complain and talk and bellyache and everything else, but until we get people riled up and understand that, that some of these programs do have cost-saving effects, CIT, jail diversion, until we get the public, we end the stigma and get the public talking about this, it's just going to be an endless cycle. So I really can't answer your question. I'm sorry. I'm just not familiar enough with the situation. I don't know if anybody else on the panel wants to jump on that or not. But the Justice Department just came in at the jail where I was based on my book, and they just hit them with a bunch of stuff and told them if they don't comply, they're going to take it over. And, sometimes that's the only way you get things done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I would like anyone on the panel's response, particularly Mr. Early's. I'm a member of NAMI Rowan, and what it means to me is that I've learned a lot from the people in NAMI. My wife was a consumer. I probably should be. But the question I have is this, is that we live in a society, I think, that's pretty much a first-person singular society. We say, I do it for me, I do it for me, I do it for this. What I've learned from NAMI Rowan is to see society more as a place where we're all social beings. We've all learned it from somebody. And it's a we, not an I. And so it's a first-person plural society. I've learned that from the people. We had a Christmas party. 25 of the 28 that were there were consumers. I thought there was only 22, but I found out later 2 of the others were consumers I hadn't known. And we had a wonderful, it was my favorite Christmas party this year, because people knew how to do it together and to be together and respect each other's differences in a special way. It seems to me that this would be a big help in thinking about how many people are affected and how big a political force it could be. It's a we situation. At our demonstration last year for mental illness awareness, we had a member who made a sign. It simply said on the top, mental illness is not an illness of choice. They're both like, and at the bottom it said, it could happen to anyone.
Yeah, that's great.
We're all in it.
You know, one of the things your NAMI group should do, if it's not doing, I'll put a plug in it right now, is, and panel members can close their ears right now, go out and buy a $30 plaque, call up your local newspaper, which was nice enough to be here today, and give an award to the politician who cares. Give an award to the district attorney who cares. Give an award to the judge who cared. These folks survive because they get reelected. So if you don't have the money, honor them if in some other way. I mean, that's part of it too. The NAMI walks are a great way to get that public. And never forget, I'm going to be real brief here because you guys have been so patient. I wrote a piece for USA Today about Psycho Donuts and said that this place was you shouldn't be making fun of people with mental illness. A year later, a woman wrote to me, and she said her son had never sought treatment, and he finally showed up at LA. He went into treatment, and the only thing he had in his pants pocket was that article where he kept circling on there, mental illness is not the person's fault. You never know where your seeds are going to land. So that's why it's important to distribute them. But there's a little simple thing you can do, NAMI could be doing right here, is honoring your local leaders who care about this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to back up on something in response to that. Sometimes you're in.
Okay. The comments I want have to do with how you view about you. No one else is telling